Think about the most important person in your life. Just really try to picture them sitting across from you right now.
Okay, yeah.
Now, I want you to try to quote exactly what they said to you last Tuesday at 2 p.m.
Oh, wow. I mean, good luck with that.
Right. You can't. Because unless it was an absolute emergency, your brain has just entirely deleted the literal transcript of that conversation.
Yeah, it's just gone.
It is. But if I asked you how you felt when they walked into the room, like whether their presence made your chest tighten with anxiety or maybe your shoulders just dropped with relief, you could tell me instantly.
Instantly. You'd know right away.
Exactly. We walk around carrying this massive illusion that our relationships are built on, the actual things we say to each other. But today, we are completely tearing apart that illusion.
We really are.
We are jumping into this deep dive to look at the unseen architecture of what actually keeps us attached to other people. Like, why do some individuals just fade from our minds the second they leave the room, while others linger for an entire lifetime?
It's a fascinating topic because it forces a complete reevaluation of, how we spend our social energy.
Yeah.
I mean, we exhaust ourselves trying to find the perfect phrasing or the wittiest response,
Oh, constantly.
the most logical argument to make someone understand us or just to like us. But when you look at the mechanics of human attachment in our source material today, the entire premise of talking our way into a connection is built on sand.
Which brings us right to the actual foundation we're exploring today. Our source material is this single, incredibly potent excerpt from a text called The Emotional Architecture of Desire.
Yeah, and it's quite the read.
When you first shared this with me, it felt like someone was just pulling the rug out from under the entire modern dating and networking culture.
I had the exact same reaction.
It takes this idea that we build relationships through logical steps and constant daily communication, and it just completely dismantles it.
It does. And the author doesn't waste any time getting to the core thesis.
No, they just dive right in.
Right. The text opens with a premise that sounds, simple on the surface, but has massive psychological implications. It says, people forget words. They forget conversations. But they never forget how you made them feel.
It's such a gut punch of a line.
It really is. And to really grasp what this text is doing, we have to start by examining the actual mechanism of discarding. We have to look at why the human brain actively and intentionally throws away the literal data of our interactions.
When I try to visualize what the brain is doing here, I immediately think about those terms and conditions agreements.
Oh, like when your phone updates.
Exactly. You get this massive wall of text on your screen, and you are technically processing the words in that moment, right?
You have to.
Yeah, you have to scroll all the way to the bottom to hit agree just to get to the next screen. You are interacting with the language. But the second you hit that button, your brain dumps the literal text.
Entirely.
It is entirely gone. You couldn't quote a single sentence of that legal jargon back to me 10 seconds later.
Not a chance.
But what you do remember, maybe a week down the line, is whether that new software update made your phone run faster and made your life easier, or...
What if you just completely drained your battery in 2 hours?
Right, and give you a massive headache. The literal transcript is dumped. The physical experience of the interaction is the only thing that actually remains.
That's a perfect analogy. The brain operates like a highly ruthless efficiency engine. Because, honestly, language is incredibly taxing.
It's exhausting.
It is. If you think about the cognitive load required just to hold a 5-minute conversation, your brain is parsing syntax, vocabulary, cultural context, tone, grammar.
All in real time.
All in real time. It's exhausting.
So the text is pointing out the profound inefficiency of words as a long-term bonding tool.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the text is suggesting words are just the vehicle, right?
Exactly. They are the delivery mechanism for an emotional state. Once the package is delivered, keeping a cardboard box like the literal words is just a waste of storage space.
Right.
Your brain throws the box away and keeps the feeling that was inside. I hear what the text is saying, but I have to push back a little here. I completely disagree that words are just the discarded cardboard box in every situation.
Okay, let's hear it.
What about an apology? Think about a scenario where someone has deeply betrayed your trust. The specific words they choose to take accountability matter immensely.
They do?
Right, like saying, I am sorry you felt that way, versus I apologize for my actions and the harm I caused.
Oh, huge difference.
Those are two completely different structural uses of language. One destroys the relationship while the other, repairs it. A vague feeling isn't enough there. So how does the text account for the structural binding necessity of words in those high-stakes moments?
That is actually the perfect stress test for this theory. Let's look at that apology scenario.
Okay.
Imagine a person looks you in the eye and delivers the perfectly crafted, grammatically flawless, highly accountable sentence. They say, "I apologize for my actions and the harm I caused."
The perfect script.
Right. But as they say it, their jaw is completely clenched, their arms are tightly crossed over their chest, and their tone is just dripping with subtle condescension. Do you accept the apology?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I would probably be more angry than if they hadn't said anything at all.
Because you aren't actually reacting to the syntax.
Right.
You are reacting to the underlying emotional frequency they are broadcasting. The words were structurally perfect, but the delivery mechanism failed because the package inside the box was resentment, not remorse.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
You will walk away from that interaction and forget the exact phrasing they used within a week, but you will permanently remember the feeling of being patronized and dismissed.
So the societal emphasis we place on having the right words fundamentally misses the text's thesis.
Completely. We obsess over the script because the script gives us an illusion of control.
You know, that brings up such a huge point about how we interact today. When you send a text message and you see those 3 little typing bubbles pop up.
Oh, the anxiety.
Exactly. You aren't actually feeling a connection in that moment. You are experiencing that illusion of control because you can edit a text, you can backspace.
You can screenshot it.
Yes, you can screenshot it and send it to 3 of your friends to committee draft the perfect, wittiest possible response.
We treat words like they are life or death.
We really do. We script out our introductions before a job interview. We practice what we are going to say on a first date in the rearview mirror of the car. We are just terrified of the space between the words.
We are terrified because we cannot easily control how we make someone feel.
Right.
Feeling is visceral. It is this alchemy of body language, micro-expressions, pupil dilation, and, pheromones that you are not even consciously aware of producing.
That's wild to think about.
And that lack of control makes us feel incredibly vulnerable. Knowing that the real metric of human connection operates completely outside of our conscious management is deeply unsettling.
So we retreat to the script?
Exactly. We retreat to the one thing we can consciously manage. Even though, as the text argues, the script is the exact thing the other person is guaranteed to throw in the trash.
This essentially means we are focusing like 90% of our social energy on the one aspect of an interaction that has a 0% retention rate.
It's a massive waste of energy.
For anyone listening who constantly feels socially awkward or who replays conversations in their head agonizing over a clumsy sentence they used at a dinner party, this is essentially a permission slip to let that go.
Let it go.
That awkward sentence went into the incinerator the moment you left the room. The only thing those people retain is whether you made them feel comfortable or seen or anxious.
Which forces a pivot in how we approach relationship building. Once we accept that logical words are discarded, we're left staring at a void.
Yeah, what's left?
If it isn't a perfectly constructed conversation that builds a connection, what is it? The author fills that void with the next major assertion.
The blueprint of desire.
Right. The text says desire isn't built on logic, it's built on emotion. It's built in moments that feel different, moments that feel real.
Okay, desire isn't built on logic. We have to really sit with the sheer friction of that statement because it flies in the face of how modern society tells us to find a partner or build a network.
Oh, definitely.
We are taught to approach relationships like we are building a structurally sound house.
Checklists everywhere.
Exactly. We make lists. We check boxes.
Yeah.
Does this person have a stable career? Are they financially responsible? Do they come from a similar background? Do we share the same 5-year goals?
We want the foundation to be solid.
We want the walls to be up to code and the roof to not leak. We want a predictable, logical asset.
And there is undeniable utility in building a structurally sound life. It keeps the rain out. But the author is drawing a hard, bright line between practicality and desire.
A house is a shelter.
Right, it is a logical construct. But desire is the lightning strike that hits the house.
I love that metaphor.
It is an entirely different elemental force. You cannot engineer a lightning strike by checking boxes on a clipboard.
No, you can't.
You cannot reason someone into desiring you, and more frustratingly, you cannot logically explain away your own desire when it completely contradicts your carefully made plans.
You see this play out constantly, you know. Think about your own life. You meet someone who is the walking embodiment of your checklist.
They are perfect on paper.
Perfect on paper. You go to dinner with them, the conversation flows logically, they hit every single metric of what you claim to want. And you sit across from them feeling absolutely nothing.
Zero voltage.
Zero. The air in the room is completely dead. And then, maybe a month later, you bump into someone who completely derails your logic.
Right.
They don't check half your boxes, maybe their life is a bit chaotic, but the moment they make eye contact, the air pressure in the room just shifts. Your nervous system reacts before your logical brain can even pull up the checklist to warn you away.
Your nervous system reacts because desire speaks the language of emotion, not data.
It really does.
But the text adds a critical qualifier here. It doesn't just say desire is built on emotion. It specifies that it is built in moments that feel different, moments that feel real.
What does real mean in this context? Because obviously everything is technically real.
Right. In this context, real does not simply mean happening in physical space. Buying groceries is real. Sitting in traffic is real. The author is using real to describe a severe interruption of the mundane.
The mundane being the script we were just talking about.
Exactly.
The choreographed dance we all do every day. You walk into the office, someone says, "How was your weekend?" And you say, "Good, too short, yours."
We all do it.
That is a simulated interaction. You are essentially two avatars bumping into each other and playing pre-recorded audio files. There is absolutely no vulnerability there.
A real moment is when that script breaks. It is the moment the avatar glitches and you are suddenly forced to interact with the unfiltered, unpredictable humanity of the person standing in front of you.
Okay, yeah, I can picture that.
And the text doesn't leave this as a vague philosophical concept either. It maps out the exact anatomy of what these script-breaking moments look like in practice.
The 3 specific examples.
Right. It lists 3 highly specific examples. A laugh that caught them off guard, a silence that felt comfortable, a look that said more than words ever could.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's dissect the mechanics of these 3 examples because they aren't just poetic flourishes.
Not at all.
There is a deep psychological through line connecting them. Take the first one. A laugh that caught them off guard. The crucial modifier there is off guard.
Yes, that's the key.
Because we all have a polite social laugh. It's the laugh you give your boss when they make a terrible pun in a meeting.
Right.
It's a managed, controlled release of air designed to smooth over a social interaction. You consciously decide to deploy it.
But an off-guard laugh bypasses the decision-making process entirely. It is a biological hijacking.
A biological hijacking, I like that.
When you say something so unexpectedly perceptive or absurd that it forces a laugh out of someone before their brain has time to censor it, you are causing them to drop their social mask.
Which is huge in the early stages of dating or networking.
It is. In the early stages of getting to know someone, we are heavily armored. We want to appear competent, collected, unfazed. A sudden, involuntary snort or a burst of laughter shatters that armor for a split second.
It proves that underneath the polished exterior, they are a messy, reactive human being.
Precisely.
And witnessing that sudden loss of control lowers your own defenses. If they are willing or forced to be vulnerable and unscripted in front of you, it signals to your nervous system that you can stop performing as well.
That shared vulnerability is what strikes directly at the emotional core.
Which leads directly into the second example, and honestly the one that I find the most difficult to achieve. A silence that felt comfortable.
This one is fascinating. Because if we accept the premise from the opening lines, that words are exhausting and eventually forgotten, then silence should logically be the most restful, connecting state 2 people can share.
Logically, sure, but emotionally.
Emotionally, for most of us, silence is terrifying. When you are on a first date or just sitting in a car with an acquaintance, a lull in the conversation triggers an immediate threat response.
It feels like a massive social failure.
Right.
The silence becomes this heavy, suffocating thing in the room, and you frantically scramble to find any random topic, like the weather, the traffic, a movie you just saw, anything just to fill the void.
Because we use small talk as a defensive shield.
Yes, as long as we are making noise, we are fulfilling the social contract, and we don't have to endure the intimacy of just existing next to someone.
We use words to keep people at a safe, manageable distance. Therefore, when a silence feels comfortable, it represents a profound rewiring of the social dynamic.
It means the absence of the need to defend yourself.
Exactly. It signals that your nervous system has registered this person as a safe harbor. You no longer feel the anxiety of having to constantly generate data to justify your presence in the room.
You are essentially communicating, I do not need to entertain you to earn my spot here, and you do not need to perform for me.
Finding someone whose mere presence is enough to quiet the anxious noise of your own mind is an incredibly rare emotional frequency.
It's the feeling of taking off tight shoes at the end of a long day. You just exhale. You can finally just be.
That's a great way to put it.
And that brings us to the final example in the author's anatomy of a real moment. A look that said more than words ever could.
We are circling right back to the inadequacy of language here.
The translation problem.
Right. When we try to communicate a complex emotion, say a sudden surge of affection or a deep sense of shared grief, we have to take that raw, abstract feeling and force it through the meat grinder of vocabulary and syntax.
It's a terrible, lossy translation process. Like, I have to encode my emotion into English, push it out of my mouth as sound waves, hope it travels through the air without being misheard.
And then hope your brain decodes those specific words back into the exact same emotion I started with.
It's like taking a high-resolution photograph, compressing it into a tiny file, texting it, and hoping the other person can still see the details. Data gets lost at every single step of the translation.
But a look bypasses the translation software entirely.
It does.
Eye contact is one of the most primal, evolutionarily ancient forms of communication we possess. When you share a meaningful look with someone across a crowded room, you aren't compressing the data. You are engaging in a direct brain-to-brain, nervous system-to-nervous system transfer.
I have to challenge this slightly, though. Okay, so a look is primal, yes, but isn't it also incredibly susceptible to projection?
How do you mean?
If I don't use words to clarify what I'm feeling and I just look at someone, how do I know they aren't completely misinterpreting the silence? I might be projecting deep desire, and they might think I'm trying to remember if I left my stove on.
That's a fair point.
Doesn't the lack of language create a dangerous ambiguity?
It absolutely creates ambiguity, but the text isn't arguing for flawless communication of facts. It is arguing for the creation of an emotional reality.
Oh, I see.
If that look, ambiguous or not, generates a sudden electric feeling of being seen and understood in the other person, the mechanism has worked.
The literal meaning of the look is less important than the visceral reaction it provokes.
Exactly. Look at the common denominator connecting all three of these examples. The off-guard laugh, the comfortable silence, the meaningful look.
They're all completely unspoken.
Unspoken and involuntary.
Yeah, and they all require a surrender of control. You cannot script an off-guard laugh. You cannot force a silence to be comfortable by sheer willpower, and you cannot manufacture the electricity of a shared glance.
They only happen when the logical brain gets out of the way.
Which brings us to the next phase of the text. How do we go from these fleeting moments to actual attachment? Because experiencing a 2-second laugh or a quiet car ride is transient.
Right. How do those transient seconds convert into a permanent bond?
The author provides the blueprint for this. They say these moments leave a mark, an imprint. And over time, those imprints become attachment. Not because of how often you talk, but because of how deeply you're remembered.
The word imprint is doing a massive amount of heavy lifting here.
It really is.
The author didn't say these moments leave a memory or a thought. An imprint is tactile. It implies mass and gravity. It is something heavy being pressed forcefully into something soft, permanently changing the topography of the surface.
Sort of like a fossilized footprint in a riverbed.
That's perfect. The animal that left the footprint is long gone. The split second the foot touched the mud happened millions of years ago. But the weight of that step was so profound that the shape of the mud was permanently altered. The text is laying out a mechanical sequence. Moment leads to imprint, and imprint, over time, solidifies into attachment.
And then the author drops what I think is the most controversial countercultural claim in the entire piece. They state that this attachment happens, quote, not because of how often you talk, but because of how deeply you're remembered.
It is a direct assault on the modern metric of connection.
It really is. We are living in an era that completely worships frequency.
Oh, absolutely.
We have gamified human interaction. We have apps that reward us with little fire emojis for maintaining a streak of messaging someone every single day.
The snap streaks.
Yeah, the snap streaks. We have read receipts that tell us down to the minute when someone saw our message. We have this pervasive societal anxiety that tells us presence equals importance.
It's exhausting.
If someone isn't texting you good morning, checking in on their lunch break, and texting you good night, the relationship is failing. We equate the sheer volume of data exchanged with the depth of the care provided. So, how does this text reconcile that? If someone disappears for 3 weeks, Modern logic says they don't care.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the modern logic is flawed because it relies on the very thing we established in the beginning is useless. The volume of discarded words.
Right, the cardboard boxes.
Frequency of communication, like texting someone 50 times a day about the traffic or what you're eating for lunch, is just a high-volume delivery of empty cardboard boxes.
It is a barrage of mundane data points.
Sending a picture of your coffee cup does not break the script, it does not lower the armor, it does not create an imprint. Frequency is an entirely logical metric. You can graph it, you can count the texts.
But we already established that desire and attachment do not run on logic.
Exactly. So the argument is that a mountain of superficial check-ins fundamentally cannot compete with the gravity of a single, profound imprint.
You could have a coworker you speak to for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 5 years. The frequency is astronomical.
But if the interactions never move past the script, if there is never a moment of shared vulnerability, they leave the company and you never think of them again.
Conversely, you could meet someone in an airport bar, spend 3 hours in a conversation that shatters your perspective on the world, share a comfortable silence watching the planes take off, and never see them again.
And 10 years later, that 3-hour imprint will still hold more emotional weight in your psyche than the 5 years of daily small talk with the coworker.
The depth of being remembered vastly outranks the frequency of talking. There's an incredible, profound relief in that concept.
There is. It takes so much pressure off.
Think about the exhaustion we all carry around, constantly trying to maintain these digital tethers to dozens of people. We feel immense guilt if we leave a text on read for a day.
Or we panic if someone we are dating goes quiet for 24 hours, assuming the silence means abandonment.
Exactly. This text acts as a massive release valve for that modern anxiety. It is telling you that you do not need to be persistently, exhaustingly present in someone's daily data stream to be deeply important to them.
If you have genuinely left an imprint, your place in their internal architecture is secure.
It shifts the goalpost of relationships from maintenance to impact. You don't need to constantly water the plant with small talk if you have planted the roots deeply enough in the emotional soil.
And the author takes this concept of impact, this idea that a true imprint defies the need for constant maintenance and pushes it to its absolute metaphysical extreme in the closing lines.
Right, because if frequency doesn't matter, then the logical progression is that time itself might not matter either.
Which leads to the gut punch of the text.
Yeah. The text concludes with this line: desire doesn't live in time, it lives in memory. And the more unforgettable the feeling, the harder it is to let go.
Desire doesn't live in time. In our day-to-day existence, we treat time as the ultimate eraser.
We really do. We have all these adages about it. Time heals all wounds. Out of sight, out of mind.
We rely on the chronological passing of days to dilute our emotions. If you haven't spoken to someone in 5 years, the logical assumption is that your connection to them has degraded to near zero.
The distance is supposed to insulate you.
But the author asserts that true imprint-level desire is entirely insulated from the decay of linear time. It exists outside of the chronological timeline.
Which loops perfectly back to the first sentence of the excerpt.
Right. We forget the conversations that happened on a specific date in 2018. The timeline deletes the literal data. But the emotional imprint, the exact visceral feeling of that afternoon, was never stored on the timeline to begin with.
It was stored in a completely different dimension. Memory.
And in that dimension, it is effectively immortal.
Let me try to visualize how this actually works, because the mechanics are just fascinating. Instead of looking at memory as a perfectly sealed terrarium, which implies something static and dead, what if we look at time as a massive, fast-moving river, and memory as a canvas standing on the shore?
I like where this is going.
The river of time is violent. It washes away the daily check-ins, the mundane arguments about whose turn it is to do the dishes, the small talk. The water just violently strips all of that data away and carries it out to sea.
But the canvas is safely on the bank.
Exactly. On that canvas is the painted imprint of how that person made you feel during a comfortable silence or a moment of true vulnerability. The river of time can flow past that canvas for decades, but the water never touches the paint.
That captures the dynamic perfectly, especially because a painting on a canvas isn't necessarily static. We interact with it. But the crucial point is that the river cannot wash the image away.
Which creates a paradox, right?
It creates what is arguably the most beautiful yet agonizing paradox of the human experience.
How so?
Well, on one hand, the immortality of the imprint is gorgeous. It means that profound connections are never truly lost. A moment of absolute understanding you shared with someone 20 years ago is just as emotionally valid and just as accessible to your nervous system today as it was the moment it happened.
You are forever enriched by these indestructible monuments of connection.
Yes. But the flip side of that is absolutely devastating.
It is the source of immense human suffering because, as the author notes, the more unforgettable the feeling, the harder it is to let go.
If the imprint is safe on the shore, completely untouched by the river of time, then you cannot use the passing of time as a tool to fix a broken heart.
You cannot. You cannot use a logical instrument, the calendar, to dismantle an emotional architecture.
This is exactly why a person can be driving to work completely content with their life, and suddenly a specific song comes on the radio, or they catch a scent of a specific cologne on the street, and they're instantly, violently transported back to a feeling they haven't experienced in 10 years.
And the grief, or the longing, hits them with zero degradation in intensity.
The 10 years that passed meant nothing, because the memory didn't age. You cannot outrun an imprint.
You really cannot outrun an imprint. If you try to apply the logic of the river to the reality of the canvas, you will drive yourself insane.
You'll sit there telling yourself, it's been 3 years, I should logically be over this by now.
Right. The data says I should be healed. But that is the builder talking. That is the architect of the logical house talking. But desire wasn't the house, it was the lightning strike. And the emotional architecture doesn't own a calendar.
We are fundamentally logical creatures forced to navigate an internal landscape that actively defies logic, actively rejects language, and completely ignores time. It is a beautiful, terrifying design.
We have mapped out an incredibly dense terrain today. It is really worth looking back at the path we just walked.
We covered a lot of ground.
We started by confronting the discarded script. That uncomfortable realization that the carefully chosen words and perfectly crafted text messages we obsess over are ultimately just the delivery boxes the brain throws in the incinerator, keeping only the feeling inside.
From there, we explored the uselessness of the logical blueprint. We recognize that while checklists and practicality can build a safe shelter, they cannot manufacture the lightning strike of desire, which requires a severe break from the predictable script.
And we looked at the exact anatomy of those breaks. The off-guard laugh that forces us to drop our armor and prove we are human, the comfortable silence that signals to our nervous system that we are safe enough to stop performing, and the primal look that bypasses the clumsy, lossy translation process of language to connect directly.
We tackled the modern myth of frequency, establishing that attachment is forged by the heavy, permanent weight of an emotional imprint, not the sheer, exhausting volume of daily check-ins and streaks.
And we finally arrived at the shores of the river of time, realizing that desire lives entirely in memory. It makes our deepest, most profound connections beautifully immortal, but terribly, agonizingly difficult to release when the person is gone.
So true.
So when you are navigating your own life this week, look closely at your interactions. Are you exhausting yourself trying to maintain a high frequency of empty words? Are you panicking over editing the perfect text message, essentially spending hours polishing a cardboard box that is going straight to the trash?
Let the box go.
Seriously.
Hello.
Or are you brave enough to actually cultivate the space for connection? Are you allowing a silence to stretch out without rushing to fill it? Are you willing to drop the polished mask and let an involuntary laugh escape? Stop trying to engineer a perfectly logical, weatherproof house and be willing to stand in the field and wait for the lightning strike.
It requires a massive surrender of control, but the reward is a connection that actually survives the timeline.
Absolutely.
However, before we end, I want to introduce a complication to this framework, something that builds on the text, but pushes us into a slightly more precarious philosophical space.
Oh, I'm ready. What is it?
We established, using your analogy, that the memory is a canvas safely on the shore, untouched by the river of time. The text says we never forget how someone made us feel. But human memory is not a high-definition video recorder.
No, it's really not.
It is a highly subjective, creative process. Every time we recall a memory, we pull it off the shelf, we handle it, and we slightly alter it before we put it back.
We touch up the painting on the canvas.
We do. Over years or decades, we smooth out the rough edges of the imprint. We edit out the annoyances. We amplify the glow of the comfortable silences.
That makes sense. We idealize it.
Right. So this raises a doubly provocative question about the very nature of what we are holding on to. If our attachment is solely anchored to this preserved emotional imprint, rather than the messy, factual, contradictory reality of the person, are we truly attached to the living, flawed human being who actually exists out in the world? Or, as time goes on, do we ultimately just become hopelessly attached to the masterpiece we have painted in our own minds?
Oh, wait. Are we just staring endlessly at our own painting on the shore, completely ignoring the real person who is standing in the river?
Exactly.
That completely reframes the tragedy of not being able to let go. Are we just grieving a ghost we created ourselves?
It's a heavy thought.
That's going to haunt me for a while, and hopefully it gives all of you something profound to deconstruct in your own minds as well. Take a moment to think about the emotional imprints you are leaving behind today, and the canvases you are currently painting. We'll see you next time for another deep dive.